I've been given nothing. God makes men what they are.
Hey guys, welcome back to RBB. Today's episode is all going to be about the Glock 21. But you can't really talk fully about the Glock 21 unless you talk about the Glock 20. And it's also helpful to give scale to the Glock 21 by talking about the Glock 30. So stick with us. So before we get started, please understand that because this is a gun review video, YouTube is going to algorithm the crap out of it. So you would really be helping out the channel if you would like and subscribe. And that will also give you a chance to not miss out on upcoming episodes as well. So what I want to talk about with the Glock 21, this is actually a Gen 4 Glock 21 SF. So it has what's kind of the slim frame. So I haven't really done anything to this gun except put a little bit of skateboard deck tape on the slide just for clearing malfunctions and reloads and that sort of thing. So I have this in a Kramer leather IWB3 shark skin inside the waistband holster, and this holster is actually about 18 years old and it still holds amazing. And I carried this off duty for years. So both the Glock 21 and the Glock 20 came out way back in 1990. For those of you who weren't around as shooters back in the 1990s, there was no interweb. We had these things called gun magazines, and they were made of paper, and you could hold them in your hand and you could turn these things called pages. And that's how we got our knowledge, other than going out to the range and shooting and talking to people. I ended up buying the Glock 21 at about 1995. This isn't it. I had a Gen 3 back in 1995. But when I first bought the Glock 21, I carried this on duty for probably about 12 years. And then I would go back and forth between this and a 1911 after that. But a couple things I want to tell you about the Glock 21 and also the Glock 20. A lot of the same things that I'm about to say about the 21 and 45 ACP can be said about the Glock 20 in 10 millimeter. The first is, and it's my opinion, and I believe some other people's opinions as well, that the Glock 21 probably saved the 45 ACP round. The reason why I say that was because starting kind of in the late 80s and the early 90s, the 1911 was starting to lose out. The military had already changed over to the NATO 9mm round, and law enforcement agencies were switching over to semi-autos, but they were going over to the double action, single action systems such as the Berettas and the SIGs of the time. And when Glock came out, they weren't really well received right off the bat. In fact, I would say up until about the mid 1990s, not a lot of people really trusted this system. The 45 ACP round was still basically associated with the 1911 weapon system, and for good reason. That's what it was designed for. But the problem is that high capacity was becoming a thing. There was this mantra that the media would say about how cops are outgunned. And so when they were going from revolvers that typically had 6 rounds in the cylinder at a time to semi-auto pistols that had magazines, they wanted to have high capacity magazines that were 13, 15, 18 rounds at the time. So along comes Glock. The Glock 17 has 17 rounds of 9mm in the magazine and then 1 in the chamber. And then a few years later, when the Glock 21 came out, at first, like all the other Glocks, a lot of people were just really down on it. It was a very big grip. Okay, and I'm not here to convince you otherwise, but I will say that from a perspective standpoint, when I started in law enforcement, I started with the Beretta 92F, which was issued to me by my department at the time. And anybody who's ever held a Beretta 92F typically is amazed at how big the grip is, and it's just a double stack 9mm magazine. So coming from that and actually carrying the 92F for about 3 years in law enforcement until I went to another agency, and when I came and felt the Glock 21, yeah, it was a big grip, but I kind of associated it with the Beretta 92F. And considering that it would allow me to carry 45 ACP rounds, which I felt at the time, and I still do believe are superior to 9mm rounds, um, that allowed me to carry something with some confidence. So you had 13 rounds in the standard capacity magazines of the Glock 21 and one in the chamber. So anybody who worked around me in law enforcement would know that I was a huge proponent of the 45. But I would say here to you today, and I'm not going to say that I'm the one that created this philosophy, but I don't know who actually did. So if you do know who created this philosophy that I'm about to say, please put it down in the comments below. It's my belief that if you're going to carry a gun for self-defense, that you should carry the largest caliber that you can manage one-handed, because these are handguns, not hands guns. They are intended to be fired one-handed. And so obviously the largest caliber that you can manage so that you are most effective with each round. But also understand that you may be firing more than one shot one-handed because that's all you have at the time, because maybe you're moving somebody around or you're holding on to something or you're become disabled in one of your arms. So you want to be effective shooting one-handed. And for me, the 45 ACP one-handed was manageable. Another consideration in my neck of the woods, and we are in the woods, we have four-legged predators such as black bears and cougars. And again, if I was limited to 10 rounds, if I was going to have to do a mag dump into a four-legged animal to defend myself because it was getting ready to try and eat me, I would definitely want to have a 45 on my hip rather than a 9mm. Enough said. So the final consideration is that they went from the Glock 21 to what they called the Glock 30. The Glock 30 is a shortened grip, but it's basically the size of the Glock 19, much thicker though. You'll see that this is also a box stock Glock 30. I just have skateboard deck tape along the top to aid with malfunction clearances and magazine changes. This is about as small as you want to be firing a 45 caliber cartridge. It's kind of like in the 9mm realm, it's kind of like the Glock 43 and the Glock 43X. That's about as small as you want to be firing a 9mm round, just because it gets pretty snappy, and managing recoil, that's anything smaller than that could be a little unpleasant. The other thing to keep in mind is for defense guns, and I've shared this with a few people, but I want to put this out so that everybody understands. Um, I don't have any problem modifying any of my pistols. In fact, a lot of my pistols may have a different trigger on them, and this 10mm actually has a different barrel that I've placed on it to give it maybe a little bit more inherent accuracy. Just understand that if you use a firearm for self-defense, that gun from the scene is not leaving with you, it's leaving with law enforcement. It's going into evidence, and it could be there anywhere from 6 months to 20 years. So something that I spent basically $500 and some change on versus a $2,000 gun that is going to go sit into evidence for who knows how long, I'll take the $500 gun. It did its job, and if necessary, I'll go get another one. So I guess the last question is the Glock 21 still relevant? Absolutely it is. In fact, this is going back in the lineup. Before I went out to the range with this, I hadn't shot this gun in about 2 years. I absolutely enjoy shooting this. But I would say with the Glock 30, even though it is a little shorter and it's kind of a stout recoil, it's very accurate for what it is. And I think it's a great self-defense tool in 45 ACP. Long live the 45 ACP and 10 millimeter too. Thanks for watching, guys. We'll catch you right back here next time on ranges, backstops, and berms.